Good afternoon, everyone. Before we start, I would like to give a short intro about this session. So, you can see here, it's about fueling the next generation, mentorship as a catalyst for youth, change making, and innovation. So, this session explores the powerful role of mentorship, plays in empowering young people to become leaders, innovators, and change makers. We will dive into how mentorship can provide the guidance, skills, and confidence needed for youth to tackle challenges, drive innovation, and create positive change in their communities and beyond. And again, I want to welcome all of you to join us as we discuss the transformative impact of mentorship on the next generation, equipping them to shape a brighter future. And this afternoon, I'm so thrilled to have a panel of inspiring leaders and young change makers who are redefining what's possible through mentorship and innovation. As I call out their names, I want all of you to give them a big round of applause. So our first speaker is Dr. Shruti Nair. Dr. Shruti Nair. Dr. Shruti Nair, leader for South Asia at Ashoka. Dr. Nair leads the team and strategy responsible for identifying and supporting Ashoka Fellows, Ashoka Young Change Makers, and building partnerships with institutions committed to social change. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much. Joining her, we have Ms. Vaikari. Let's give a big round of applause. An Ashoka Young Change Maker and the founder of Shkola, a platform connecting high schoolers with college students for guidance on building their college profiles. Vaikari was selected from over 1,800 candidates globally for this role in 2024. Thank you, Vaikari. Thank you. Joining her, we have Mr. Kiran Kumar, Regional Mentor of Change for Karnataka under the Atal Innovation Mission. As he comes, let's give him a big round of applause. Welcome him. Is with us. And Mr. Kiran brings over 27 years of expertise in innovation and product strategy with leadership experience at global corporations like Infosys, Motorola, and Philips. Thank you so much, sir. And finally, let's welcome Mr. Akash, an Ashoka Young Change Maker and founder of Yuva Spark, a non-profit dedicated to child welfare and education. Since founding Yuva Spark at 17, Akrish has impacted over 346,000 lives across India. And his achievements have been recognized by the UN, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many more. So, yeah, let's welcome them and join us as we explore the transformative impact of mentorship on young change makers who are actively shaping a better future. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for the introductions and for setting the context. Very helpful. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As Manish mentioned, we're here to talk about the role of mentoring, particularly in change makers' journeys, the larger change-making ecosystem, the social innovation ecosystem. So that's what we're here for. Maybe before we start the round of questions, I wanted to maybe also quickly ask the audience with a quick show of hands, how many of you have had a mentor play a critical role in your journeys? Yeah, that's great. And how many of you have played the role of a mentor in somebody else's journey? Yeah, thank you. No, I think it's very helpful because to also constantly recollect the role of a mentor and also to think about your own role in somebody else's life trajectory as well, right? I think it's important to keep reflecting. My invitation to all of you as you listen to the session would be to think of your own experience and your own lived realities and journeys as well, and maybe give your mentor a call at the end of the session and just acknowledge their roles in your lives. Before we start, maybe what we could do is, maybe I can quickly set context of, because there are two Ashoka Young Changemakers, and I'm here from Ashoka, and we've had the privilege of just being in the social entrepreneurship, social innovation ecosystem for a long time. And one of the things that we realized, so Ashoka has been sort of identifying and finding social entrepreneurs for the last 40 years. And one thing we realized as we found these phenomenal people and brought them into the community that we've been building over the years is that almost 80% of them started very young in their lives. In fact, they started in their teen years. So what that told us was that many social entrepreneurs or people who are changing the world are realizing that they have the power to do that much younger in life. Right? And with that sort of learning, we started building this community of Ashoka Young Changemakers who are in the 12 to 20 age group. And we very selectively and carefully sort of work with this community to position them as role models for all of us, for other young people, to realize that young people really do have the power to change, right? And it's on us on sort of supporting them through that journey. So that's what we've been doing over the years. I think one of our, and if I wanted to sort of specifically also narrow down on the mentoring piece for Ashoka and our experience there. And I think firstly, for us, mentorship has been a constantly evolving concept, right? As we work with young change makers, we also realize that that they will be at different points of their own change-making journey. And you'll hear from Vaikari and Akash on how they started out and what role mentorship had at different stages of their life. But particularly that, they will start with an idea, but they also will build a team. They will also create an impact. They may or may not choose to continue being on that path for whatever reason. But what is important for us as Ashoka is that they develop the skill set and the mindset of solving problems, which is what we call the change-making mindset. And the second important piece for us with the mentorship is that we have this community of Ashoka fellows who are social entrepreneurs. How do you sort of create opportunities for young people to interact and engage with Ashoka fellows and learn from their experience as well, right? So a lot of interactions that they have had in their change-making journeys is also with established social entrepreneurs who have already been on that path before. And I think third and most important for us is that for us, mentoring is an alliance. I mean, that's how we see it. Our job is to bring people together. And a lot of time, mentoring happens with somebody who's senior, like I said, has been on that path, or somebody who's a peer and maybe just a few years ahead of you in terms of what their experience has been, right? So it's about, for us at Ashoka, it's about building that alliance, just creating that opportunity of bringing people together and letting them sort of find what they want to find. But I think what is most important for us to acknowledge is also that mentorship oftentimes is not about I know it all, right? And that's not the space that we come from. It is from a space that this is what my lived reality was, and you take what you can and what is most applicable for you within your lived reality. So I think it's acknowledging that is equally important as we work with our young people. Okay, so I think with that quick context, I want to sort of start with an opening round of question, and maybe Kiran, we can start with you. You have been a mentor in a very interesting national program to drive sort of greater scientific temper, curiosity and innovation among young people in school and even beyond schools with the Mentor India program, which is part of the Atal Innovation Mission. So if you could just share a bit about your journey as a mentor and how the role of a mentor changes across the journey of a young change maker. Because it's not a constant state of being, right? It's dynamic.
Exactly.
So how do you sort of also travel along that path with a young change maker?
Sure, certainly, Shruti. Thank you, Shruti, for the setting the context. So, let me just first set the context by giving a brief about the program that I've been associated with. Many of you probably have heard about Atal Innovation Mission, which is part of Niti Aayog, Government of India. So they have a program called Mentor India program, and I've been part of this program for the last 6+ years. It's actually, the Mentor India program has almost 7,000+ mentors from across the country. And we have some of the mentors in this room who are actively mentoring school students. The reason this program was conceived was because Atal Innovation Mission set up something called as Atal Tinkering Labs. These are like maker spaces in schools where students get to tinker, solve problems, come up with innovations, learn about entrepreneurship and all of these things. And we mentors come from diverse fields, from different industries, some from academia, some from a wide variety of fields. There are engineers, doctors, chartered accountants, business people, everybody in this, the mentoring group. And we have been mentoring students assigned to assigned to us by Atal Innovation Mission. So it's been a long journey for me, and I have been mentoring school students in all these areas: tinkering, problem solving, innovating, entrepreneurship, change making. These are my areas which I'm personally passionate about, and I've been mentoring school students from class 6 to class 12th. Of course, my mentoring journey goes back much earlier to my engagement with Atal Innovation Mission. I've been mentoring for almost 18 years. And those days, I started my mentoring way back in 2006, where I used to mentor children from underprivileged backgrounds. And many of those children have today grown up. They have become adults. They have got jobs. Some of them even have children. But we still meet once a year. We go out for lunch or dinner, and we have a good time reminiscing about old times and also thinking about the future. So it's a good bonding that I have developed with many of my mentees. Now, coming back to, so what I do, in fact, in terms of my mentoring journey through Atal Innovation Mission, and also the various roles that I play in the process of mentoring these students, let me give you a few examples. In fact, when I started way back in 2018, I started with one little girl. Her name was Srishti, and she was in class 6th. She had just come to class 6, and that was her first experience with Atal Tinkering Labs. And she was just learning a bit about tinkering, okay? Because in schools, regular schools, it's all about textbook learning. And these Atal Tinkering Labs gave them an opportunity to tinker and dabble with things, build some small prototypes. They used to use some electronics and microcontrollers. They are exposed to all of these, and some of them are even exposed to 3D printing and things like that. So that is where I started mentoring her. And in the process, I realized that she's a fast learner. Then I said, okay, I need to educate her and take her to the next level. So I started playing the role more like as a sort of a trainer or a teacher. And then I taught her about design thinking. I exposed her to the world of design thinking, which is a process for problem solving. It's an approach for problem solving. And then she picked it up very rapidly, and she started coming out with very innovative prototypes. And very soon, she was on top of things. And then I got her introduced to a few national level competitions, innovation competitions and things like that. And she submitted her entry for the Inspire Manak Award, which is one of the national level innovation competitions for school children. And she made it. She made it to the top. And she got 10,000 rupees as the award money to enhance her innovation further. So she's become a really good innovator, and she has done it 4 times in a row now. Now, let me tell you about another student by name Meghna. She was also in class 6 when I met her way back in 2021. I had just launched a national level entrepreneurship program with Atal Innovation Mission way back then in the midst of pandemic. And Meghna was really creative girl. And she realized, when I was mentoring her, I realized that she's very creative and I started supporting her. And she came up with this brilliant idea of creating a mobile app through which music lovers, music learners, and music teachers could connect with each other, and they learn music. The learners get to learn music from their teachers online in the midst of pandemic. So this is how these things went about. And then I've been mentoring her even now. And she's really amazing. And I also started a program called Tinker Champ, especially with many of my students who had that can-do spirit, who had a lot of curiosity, innovation. They were very creative. And I had students, mentees like Jaya, who is here. She's one of my mentees and one of the most active Tinker Champs. This Tinker Champs is a program which is for grooming young change makers among school students. And this has been running for 3 years. And the best thing about this is Atal Innovation Mission has officially recognized the Tinker Champs group today. And they have been consistently giving them opportunities to make an impact at the national level. This year's Tinkerpreneur Bootcamp, the entrepreneurship bootcamp that Atal Innovation Mission ran, was completely planned, organized, and executed by these students, with Jaya leading the effort. So my journey as a mentor has come a long way, and I've been able to make some impact personally, but more importantly, my mentees have made much bigger impact than me, I would say. Of course, I've been able to make an impact on probably close to 1 lakh students in the last few years. But my mentees, in a very short period of time, 2 or 3 years, they have impacted more than 50,000 students. And I think very soon they will be overtaking me, and they're much bigger change makers. Yeah, that's a brief about my journey.
No, there you go. Thank you, Kiran. And I love the pride that I see, while you share that, this is what my mentees have gone on to achieve, right? And they have created a much larger impact than that you say that you have. But I'm sure that, you've had a powerful role to play. Maybe we can quickly turn to, both of you, Vekri and Akash. And I think it's, as young change makers, you have had different sort of life stages in your change-making journey. And I have been fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to see that much longer with you, Akash, but also now starting out with you, Vekri. But if you could share a bit about your journey as a change maker, right? And how mentoring has helped, or at maybe a different point of time where you were or were not able to get the kind of mentoring that you needed, right? In case there wasn't a formal mentor, so to say, because I think it's still a very nascent ecosystem. But tell us about your journey and what roles mentors have played in that. Do you want to go first, Vakri?
So I'd like to start with soft skills first, because before change making, you have to be ready to relay your information in a very coherent way. So I've had informal mentors all along my journey. So even my best friend or some of my seniors could have been my mentors. So I got to learn about talking with confidence, with grace from my best friend. I got the work ethic that I have from my peers who were learning, who were going through the JEE program. So that really helped me to have a base as a change maker. And then when I was 15, one of my friends tried to kill herself. And that's when I also had mental health issues, but I didn't go to the extreme. And so I knew then that I wanted to help when I had my issues. But then when my friend committed suicide, I needed to help. So now I have to start, but how do I start? and where do I start? So I went to intern with a psychiatrist who was my first informal mentor for my first initiative called Atman, which is a mental health education platform. So starting from mission, vision statements to designing a curriculum that works for 6 to 9 grade students, everything I learned with her, the very how to analyze, interpret the ICD DSM-5, which is the holy Bible for psychological issues. So I needed to learn about the issue myself, and I interned with her. So she was my first informal mentor. And then to start the actual, I started out thinking that I should teach or educate teachers and parents about mental health issues rather than teenagers. But then when then when I interned with the psychiatrist, I got to know that a student's environment is constantly going to keep changing. So I have to help the students rather than the adults. So that happened. And then when I really wanted to start on ground, I started with a community radio initiative. So the coordinator for the program really helped mentor me on the community service side of things, where to go, how to approach people, how to convince them to let you be there, or how to add to your credibility and stuff like that. And even being down to earth, how to interact with people, how to talk, different words which I didn't know first that I should use instead of other words that I was using. So these really small things, they were taught to me by Radio Vishwas. And then with my second initiative, Scholar, it is a mentoring platform itself. So high schoolers connect with university students to learn about the application process and other stuff that comes along the way. This is mostly for people going abroad, and the counselors or the mentors they have they come at a very steep price. So we really wanted to make it much more accessible and more focused on the students. So with that, Yashvi sir from Ashoka helped. I have Sri Ram sir from Clever Harvey helping me with the initiative. So starting with MOUs, making invoices, everything I had to learn before starting out the initiative, before going on ground, and my mentors really helped me with that. Now these were informal, but if I had formal mentors, that could really I don't have to search for people to help me with a specific task. So that would have helped for me. That's it for me.
Thank you, Vaikri. And it reminded me of this quotation that they say, when you're ready, the teacher arrives. I think it's sort of like that, right? I mean, when you are ready, sometimes the mentor also arrives, and sometimes you have to go out and look for them. But Akash, why don't you share a little bit about your experience and your journey as a change maker, and what role mentors have played or not played, either way.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I think first a very inspiring story, Vaikri. Thank you very much for sharing that. And sir, thank you for sharing your journey as well. There is so much change-making energy in this panel, but I somehow don't see it on the faces of all of you. I know all of you are hungry, but let's do this small activity. Can we all just move our head up and down like 5 times before I start off? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, one very, very nice thing I used to do in college, even if I was zoned out when my teacher was teaching, was whenever they looked at me, I would keep doing this so that they felt like I was listening to them. So for the next few minutes when I speak, let's all do this. Wherever I'm looking, all of you are going to do this to say that, you're listening to what I'm saying.
This
Is
is
that,
change making in action happening here.
does that work for all of you? Can I hear a yes? All right. So I run a non-profit organization called Yuva Spark. We work in the early childhood education space. We're working to digitize Anganwadi centers and improve the quality of early childhood education for children between the ages of 3 to 6. you've all already forgotten the nodding part of it, but you've got to keep going. I'm going to keep stopping every time I don't see people nodding. But so we primarily work to digitize early childhood education, and we work across 10 different states. We've digitized our content in different vernacular languages. We work with the Women and Child Development Department. We use WhatsApp groups to push content to Anganwadi teachers, and this is in turn used in their day-to-day education to improve the quality of early childhood learning. So this is a brief of the work we do. And obviously, when I started my organization as a 17-year-old in 2018, and I've run this initiative through my high school days, through my college days, and now I continue to run it along with my full-time work. And obviously, from a bird's eye view, the kind of introduction, say, the gentleman who introduced all of us gave, it looks like, okay, this initiative seems to be running really well. They've got a lot of funding, they've got a lot of recognitions, they're scaling very rapidly, they've got a lot of young people joining, so everything must have always been very, very good along the journey, right? But I think all along the way, we've had a lot of speed bumps, a lot of hiccups, and at every single point, a mentor has always played a very key role. Like when we started off, for lack of a better way to put this, we were fluttering like headless chicken because we had zero clue what to do. So one of the primary reasons why we started the organization was I wanted to create a platform for young people and teenagers to exhibit social leadership. But I didn't know what problem we were solving. One problem I identified was that, there weren't enough platforms for young people to exhibit social leadership for child welfare. Most of these big organizations or most prominent organizations had people who were twice or thrice our age when we as, say, 16, 17-year-olds were trying to create change, and nobody was taking us seriously. So I wanted to create my own platform. I went ahead, created a platform, brought together like 100 volunteers from some 14 different institutions, and we had no clue what we had to do next. Somebody would say, let's do education, so we would go to schools and set up a library. Then somebody would say, why don't we do mentorship? So we would go to an orphanage and start doing mentorship on Sundays. Then somebody was like, why only education? If we're a platform, we should be focusing on gender rights. That is a more important issue. Then we tried organizing a campaign to, support gender issues. And then at one point, somebody said, why stop here? Why don't we try our hand at youth employment? So there would be so many of these different ideas coming up every single day because there was so much energy when you run an organization with, say, 12th graders, 11th graders, and so many teenagers all working together, right? So that is the kind of position we were in. At this point, I think a person whom I looked up to as a mentor. He used to serve as a director of one of the social impact investment funds, and he actually came in, helped us identify a cause, and he said, "Okay, you're not going to make any impact if you keep fluttering around like this. You've got to pick one cause and one issue to solve." So that was the first. That was the. Excuse me. So that was the first step where we decided, okay, education is the issue that we are going to be focusing on. And this was around, say, 2018, 2019, and we continued still running a few programs at orphanages, government schools, and all of that. And after that, like I think Vaikari mentioned very rightly, you as a change maker also need to learn a lot of soft skills. You need to develop as an individual. So when I applied to the Ashoka program, I keep sharing this a lot of times, the Ashoka Young Changemakers program, I had zero soft skills. I did not know how to even explain what I was doing. So I remember my interview with Shruti ma'am. It went on for 30 minutes, and after that, Shruti ma'am was like, Akash, thank you for explaining, but I still don't think I understand what you do. Because I was telling her about every single thing we were working on, and we had like, say, 10 different things. But, thanks to Shruti ma'am and everyone else at Ashoka for actually helping me come up with, say, a one-liner to describe my work. But along the way, I think the kind of confidence that my mentors, especially from Ashoka, Yashvir sir, Shruti ma'am, they've all had, has played a huge role, right? One example I'd say is there was this event a couple of years ago which was in Jaipur, and it would cost me quite a bit to attend that event. It was going to cost like some 30,000 rupees to attend the event, and as a student that was quite a bit, and obviously my organization didn't have that kind of money to spend it and for me to go there. But Yashvir sir said, you know what, I'll fund it. This is a really good platform. You should go there and you should try networking. And he actually did fund it, and I was And initially, I was very scared, I didn't know whether there would be enough value from it or not. But then I went there, I was able to speak to some of the people there, and we ended up raising more than 1 crore rupees in CSR from just that one event. And that was like a great platform for us to start off with, right? And I think that kind of confidence that mentors really have in you. And a lot of times, I think with Yashvir sir works with Shruti ma'am, by the way, for context, and they run the Ashoka Young Changemakers program together. So I think a lot of times the mentors who believe in you more than you believe in yourself really plays a very key role. So one of the things, for example, I think while introducing me, the gentleman said that I had a recognition from Forbes, right? So I did not think I had done anything worthy enough to be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. One fine afternoon, Yashvir sir just called me and said, you know what, do you want to come to the Ashoka office for lunch? I said, sure. I just went there. He was telling me a couple of things, and he was like, you know what, I think I will nominate you for this recognition. And I was like, oh, no, this is for, say, people like you who've done a lot. I'm just right out of college. What have I even done to deserve this? But, Yashvir sir really sort of had that belief in me and kind of did go ahead and nominate me for that recognition. And that helped me unlock a lot of other opportunities, right? And after I graduated from college, so I studied at BITS Pilani, I majored in computer science. So most people would probably expect me to go and get a well-paying corporate job. And when I was graduating, I had an Ivy School admit. Like most other common people, I also applied for a master's because most of the people in my batch were either applying for masters or getting jobs. So I also applied and I had an Ivy School admit. And cut to the end of my college program, I decided I did not want to go study right now, and I wanted to take a year off just to volunteer and run my organization and build it up a little more. Obviously, in India, this is a huge taboo, right? What is, you're graduating from a top school, and my parents have gone around telling every single relative, you know what, my son's gotten a scholarship, he's going to study in the US, he's going to this Ivy League school and all of that, and suddenly I come home one day and say, listen, you know what, I'm rejecting that. I'm going to sit here and run a non-profit for a year. So obviously, doing that was very, very hard. And this is where I think someone like Yashvir sir, he spent a lot of time. He actually came to my house, spoke to my parents, and he said, listen, this is what I did as well. I also graduated from BITS Pilani. I also ran my own organization. Then I ended up going to, say, Oxford, and then now I work at Ashoka. You should really give him that 1 year. So I think having a mentor like Yashvir sir who really believed in the work I do, and not just at a professional level, but also at a personal level, was willing to invest so much of his time to ensure I got ahead in life, has really, really played a pivotal role in my success, right? And one other instance, I'm probably looking at you for time, but one other instance I would like to share is another of my very close mentors is Mr. Mayur, who's the founder of Nirman. So Nirman is a very large organization, a very large non-profit, right? So during one of my initial, so when I was just about to graduate from college, I was just talking to Mayur sir about about the trajectory for my organization and all of that. So at this point, he said, okay, you want to raise CSR, but say somebody wants to come and meet you, where do they come? I'm like, maybe to my house, I don't know, I don't have a space. And he's like, the first thing you've got to do is make this more formal, get an office space. And me being me, I've always been very frugal about spending any amount of capital from my nonprofit, because I was like, the maximum amount of money has to go into programs and not for, say, administrative expenses. So I did not want to spend the money. So he said, listen, I trust you and I know you're going to go and raise money, but until the moment you actually raise money, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to go get an office space. I will keep paying rent for your office space until you come back and tell me, listen, I've raised enough money and I can, I can sort of pay for this myself. And that kind of confidence that he had really played a huge role. And I think with both Yashvir sir and Mayur sir putting so much of their confidence behind me, that really helped me raise quite a bit of capital. And say in like the first 15 months after I graduated, we raised some 2.5 crores in CSR, which is like quite a bit for a fully volunteer-driven organization, which probably, usually would struggle to raise capital, especially from structured, say, CSR organizations. So behind this success, I think the the confidence that mentors have in you, and their willingness to sort of intervene at such a personal level has really played a journey.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you for, not just sharing your journey, but also acknowledging and celebrating your mentors in the process. And I think what really stood out for me from, your personal journeys and experiences, all three of you, was the role of mentorship at different stages of a change maker, right? So, at an idea stage, or even before that, Vaikri, you shared, how do you even have the skill set to articulate and think about your idea, to how do you sort of build a team, how do you create the impact that you want to create, and how do you celebrate yourself and the work that you have done and the impact that you have created as well. So I think it's wonderful to hear the nuances of the role of mentoring. I want us to zoom out a little bit now, and maybe step a little back and think about the entire ecosystem, right? And really think about how can we create a more enabling environment or an enabling ecosystem so that it's not just serendipity that we find mentors, right? There is an intention behind it, and we change makers or students find more mentors and in their journeys in a more structured way, right? So what is the vision that you have, and what are the gaps that you see that need to be filled as well in this entire ecosystem that that will help young people thrive as change makers or innovators? Kiran, do you want to go?
So basically, when I started my mentoring journey in 2006, the word mentoring itself was probably not so well known. But I still started, and it's been a long journey. But even to this day, if you see, mentoring probably is still not so well known, especially when I work with school children. They're not familiar with the concept of mentoring. Forget change making. Mentoring itself, nobody knows. Especially of course, in colleges, probably they're more familiar with, but in schools, they don't understand. When I go to the school for the first time, they would not understand the difference between a teacher and a mentor. They would expect me to behave like a teacher, which I was not very familiar with. I didn't know how to, I was more friendly with them, not strict like a teacher. So that was the difference. And I also had to learn in the process, and also had to set the expectations clear, the kind of engagement that I would have with them. And it took me some time to have that orientation, get everybody oriented. But today, even if you look at, of course, I groom change makers. That's what my primary role as a mentor is. And I offer them all the skills and knowledge and expertise which are crucial for change makers, which is all about tinkering, problem solving, innovating, entrepreneurial skills, 21st century skills. I get them to acquire 21st century skills through the change-making initiatives that I ask them to, or encourage them to drive. But change-making itself is still not it's probably still on the fringe. It's not still mainstream. Probably it is much more well-known at the college level than it is in the school. So school students don't understand all of these concepts. I'm sure Jaya would agree with me on that, right? When you started off, you didn't know what change-making was, probably. And then you slowly are, and now you look back and suddenly you've already become a change maker, right? So that is how it is. So the big gap I see today is the concept of change making has to be made, is still lacking, and that gap has to be bridged so that it becomes more popular. So my vision for this is to make it more popular. So we have been driving many initiatives, many programs like the Changemaker Summer Camp and Winter Camp that we have been driving, where we are upskilling students, school students, on many of these fundamental skills that a changemaker needs, and also encouraging them to take their own initiatives so that they start taking action. It's not enough if they just have skills and forget about it. That's what they do in schools. They just learn something, write the exam and forget all about it. But here we want them to take action and make an impact in the real world, not in the lab. We want them to come out of these adult tinkering labs and do an impact in the real world. So that is still a gap, as far as I see, a significant gap that needs to be bridged. So the concept of change making is not so well known. And the other aspect is, maybe I have just made a few points. Wanted to share a few points with you. The concept of, or the culture of creativity or innovation. These are things that needs, again, there is a significant gap, I feel. This culture has to be imbibed from a very early age. Of course, a lot of change has been coming, and children are learning about all of these things starting from class 6 in many of the adult tinkering lab schools. But we have only 10,000 adult tinkering labs in our country today. But the number of schools are in lakhs and lakhs. So many of the schools that don't have adult tinkering labs probably don't have exposure to many of these kind of things. So that is an area where I see a significant gap that needs to be bridged. Maybe more adult tinkering labs have to be set up. More mentors engagement has to start. So there is a significant gap there where the culture and the mindset of children can be honed at an early age. And when it comes to the mentors themselves, one of the big challenges I see is the commitment for the long term. That is something that I see a gap. It's not mentoring is all about going and giving a lecture. It's not about a one-time engagement. It has to happen over a period of time, maybe months and years, maybe sometimes even decades. That's the kind of long-term engagement. And one needs to have a lot of passion, perseverance, dedication, and the adaptability to engage with children. And there are significant gaps that needs definitely training for the mentors, and also to for the mentors themselves to figure out, okay, is this something for me to do? Am I ready to commit the time and energy that is required to take this on? Because it's a huge challenge. It's very demanding. It's not so easy. So we are trying to solve some of these challenges by wherever, of course, at the same time, we don't have mentors in many of the schools. Children are not used to this mentoring concept. They don't have access to mentors itself. So one of the initiatives that I have taken is to drive this Tinker Champ initiative among school children, which is basically children who have learned certain knowledge and skills, they teach it to other children. So they become peer mentors, and they in turn go and share the knowledge and skills. They guide their juniors. That is one way I'm trying to do. And the other way is we're getting teachers to play the role of mentors. It's not enough if you just teach in the classroom. We want teachers to take up the role of mentoring, where teaching becomes more like a project-based or initiative-based learning, where teachers play a different role. So we are providing all the skills that are needed for a mentor or a change maker, even for the teachers. They're also learning all the problem-solving skills, innovating skills, entrepreneurial skills, so that they also feel confident that they can take up these kind of things with the children. Otherwise, many a times I see teachers probably feel that their children know better than them. That is one of the challenges that I keep hearing from teachers. At the same time, we are also trying to involve alumni, the ex-students of the schools, so that they can also come and mentor. And another big gap I see is with the involvement or the support from parents. Support and encouragement from parents is one big challenge when it comes to children taking up change making at an early age. Because today in our schooling system, the focus is more on academic excellence. So you need to get good marks, otherwise you'll not get a good admission in a good school or a college. So the focus is always on academic excellence. So how do we change this? So one of the things that I've been driving is to involve parents also in some of our upskilling programs. So that, for example, recently we had a workshop in one of the schools where I mentor. We got the parents and their children team up together, and they take up a problem and they solve it together. It's a design thinking workshop where they do it together. When they do it together, they're more excited. The parents also understand what children are going through in these labs, and they are more supportive of their children. So, but my larger vision is to create a sort of a change-making community, a supporting community, which not only involves just parents and teachers and having these labs and things like that, but a larger community which will provide, if you are a budding change maker, like any of them, I'm sure they talked about this kind of challenges they went through. But can we make their life easier? Of course, Ashoka definitely provides them a lot of support. But as a community, can we come together? Because as a community, I don't see that culture of tinkering or innovation and things like that that's happening in the mainstream. If that becomes mainstream and the communities become more supportive, the job of change makers can become a lot more easier. So this is a vision towards which I'm working personally. I'm very excited about it. But it's a long journey. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, so that's a brief about my thoughts.
Yeah, so one insight I'd like to say is through Atman, I understood that students would listen more to their peers than rather than their parents or anyone much older than them. So that's why with Atman we started mentoring through peers. So there was this program called Sathi where we trained 40 students to relay mental health information to another 1400 students. So that worked a lot because again, peers are better to mentor, not in the very um, technical way, but peers, students listen more to the peers than someone who's much older than them, and that's what we're doing with Scholar too, right? So when older people are much more inaccessible, peers are much more accessible, and that's why we're connecting high schoolers with their seniors through to go through all of the process. And so the era they've lived in is kind of similar to the students, so the information or the insights are much more fresh, and the students are much more receptive towards them. So that's what we're doing with Scholar, and that's what we're doing with Atman. Yeah.
Thank you, Vakri. Akash, what is your vision for the mentoring ecosystem for change makers?
Sure. And thank you so much, ma'am. And I think first off, probably both Kiran and Vakari have shared a lot. They've clearly come very well prepared. Usually a lot of times you don't just learn, you get to learn a lot from your peers, like Vakari said. And I think one thing I'll take away from probably Kiran is that I need to come as prepared as he did. Honestly, I've not. So let's say I don't have like a lot of points listed out. But one thing that I really wanted to say is a lot of these, like Kiran rightly pointed out, probably we don't have a very strong change-making mentorship ecosystem in schools or colleges. But one ecosystem which is rapidly growing is, say, the startup or incubation ecosystem within a lot of colleges, within a lot of, even quite a few schools are trying to experiment with entrepreneurship boot camps and a lot of this, right? A lot of these kind of initiatives. So one very simple idea which could be adopted, especially given that some of you do come from, say, the education space or have quite a bit of pull with the schools and colleges, is one very simple initiative which can be adopted is providing the same recognition to non-profits that is provided to startups. Because if you are building a startup today, or if you have a registered startup, a lot of ecosystems like, say, Atal, or a lot of incubation ecosystems within colleges already provide you a lot of support. They provide you access to mentors, they provide you a workspace, they provide you some initial seed capital. All of that support is there. And having, during my college days, tried my hand at building a startup and building a nonprofit, I did try and register my own startup, raised a little bit of pre-seed capital as well. So between these two, I feel the startup route was much easier because this ecosystem already exists. A very simple thing which can be done is to tap into the same ecosystem to provide the same recognition to nonprofits and as a result of that, they would already have access to this already built ecosystem. They can access these workspaces, maybe some amount of initial seed capital. They can also have a workspace for their volunteers or employees, and they can also scale their initiatives through the mentors network, which already exists. So I think that would be a very simple addition or change that can be done to a lot of educational institutions to build a mentoring ecosystem.
Thank you, Akash. And I think one of the, something that I heard you all share was how do you sort of develop the mentoring ecosystem both at an individual level and an institutional level, right? And I think at an individual level, it's important for each one of us when a young person sort of comes with an idea and says that this is a problem that they want to solve, be appreciative of that, support them in that, and please don't take over. Because I think oftentimes as adults, we have the tendency to sort of come to the answers, but I think it's very important to just keep asking the right questions and not come to the answers yourself, right? And let them come to the answers. So I think that has been my experience at the individual level, to not take over, to encourage, and to just be that just be that sounding board for any young person who sort of wants to, and I think by the third or the fourth time when they keep coming back with the same solution, they are already identifying themselves as a change maker, right? They may or may not have the articulation for it, but they are there. So I think it's important for us to sort of nudge them in that direction. I think at the institutional level, and Kiran and Akash, you both touched upon this, was it's not just about people who understand change making so far, organizations like the Atal Innovation Mission or Ashoka or many others, but it's also about parents. It's also about the education, the schools, right? So how do we sort of advance the culture of change making in these different ecosystems, right? And that's something that, my request to all of you would be to sort of take that as a takeaway. And the funding ecosystem, like you mentioned, Akash. So I think it's already, there is some attention there, but how do you sort of encourage that a bit more? I have been already shown the placard for time, so I want to quickly sort of switch this over to the audience and maybe take a couple of questions or comments or thoughts, anything that you may have just listening to this conversation today. Okay. I don't know which order, but we can go with the youngest one first. Go, Jaya.
Hello. Yeah. So as Akash mentioned that the startups already have an ecosystem ready for them to tap into. They have access to mentors, to VCs, and all of these things. And non-profits do not have access to the exact same ecosystem as well. But we want them, the entire ecosystem, to be a little open to non-profits as well. But in my opinion, startups and non-profits do have the same needs, but some of them are different. Let's take an example of investments. Now, startups can get access to venture capitalists who are infamously known to run behind profits. But for non-profits, you can't do the exact same thing. So what do you think would be required to change in the ecosystem to welcome non-profits easily?
Just be quick, Akash.
Sure. That is a very interesting question. Vakri and I were just discussing about how cool it usually is to ask the panelists questions which would leave them stumped just before this panel, and I think you've done just that. So that's very spot on. So I think so. One of the things is, I know you mentioned that there are a lot of differences between, say, a non-profit and a startup, right? I feel there are a lot more similarities than differences, right? For example, let's say what a non-profit calls fundraising, a startup would call business development. At the end of the day, it is the exact same thing you're doing. You're going and probably you have you have 1,000 other non-profits which want to pitch for the exact same capital. How do you stand out? How do you do your brand building? How do you connect with the funder? How do you tell your story, right? It's very similar to what a non-profit would call, what a startup would call business development, right? And what a startup would call product market fit, you're in a non-profit terminology, you would probably call rapid prototyping when you roll out different programs. So similarly, I feel like there are a lot of similarities between running a non-profit and running a startup, and the same ecosystem can definitely, a similar ecosystem can definitely help both of them, right? In a startup ecosystem, you usually have angel investors and high net worth individuals who would be making equity-based investments in a startup. A lot of the same people would also be making philanthropic contributions to non-profits. Like for example, in my personal journey, one of my batchmates had a startup which is working to, which is trying to create some operational level changes in the energy ecosystem. So he had a mentor who was a board member of a large oil and gas company. And I ended up interacting with the same mentor and raised CSR from that person. So this way, I think there are a lot of similarities. Coming to the differences, I think probably the only couple of things would probably be the kind of people and the outcomes that they want. We'd have to identify the kind of mentors who probably prioritize change over who probably prioritize social return on investment rather than financial return on investment. And those would be a lot of, say, minor changes that would have to be made. But I still do feel that there are a lot more similarities, and the same ecosystem can be leveraged for the benefit of both organizations.
Thank you, Akash.
Want you to put some light on this Prerna mentoring program, what this new setup has come in, wherein they are the, what you call, official sponsors for that. How do you relate ATL and this Prerna? Because in the morning session, I was just asking the same question to Mr. Rishek also. Whether it is an NEP or SEP, right? So now, I think so, this Atal Innovation Mission is run by Government of India, if I'm not wrong, right? So they are run mostly in CBSE schools and all. But as was told in the first session, 10 lakh, you have more than 10 lakh students which are not adopted this ATL machine itself. So how do you relate? Because now the new mentorship has started now by this organization. So how do you feel whether really this mentoring will definitely get a change in what we are still doing, or what is the difference, what you feel should the gap difference to be, what you call, filled up with this one? That is one question I just want you to add.
I'm not very familiar with the Prerna program, although I had worked with Prerna long back. They did have some mentoring program long back, and I was familiar with that, but I'm not. Hello? Can you hear me now? Yeah. So the thing is, I'm not very up to date with the Prerna's mentoring program or whatever new initiatives they have been undertaking. But I can tell you from what Atal Tinkering Labs or Atal Innovation Mission has been doing in terms of mentoring and things like that. Would that help?
I can kind of comment a little bit on the scope of the two.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm familiar with kind of the.
Sure, if you could quickly do that, and we'll take one last comment after that.
So the Atal Innovation Mission and the mentoring around that is for STEM-related innovation in schools.
Right.
While Prerna is by the Department of Collegiate and Technical Education for college students to be mentored towards their career development, ultimately. I mean, that's the kind of broad difference between the two.
Sure.
So they actually don't really overlap.
Okay.
One would probably feed into the other.
Sure, thank you. Maybe we can take the programmatic piece later, but if you have anything on the
just
larger.
one comment on
Sure.
the discussion that happened
Sure.
between Jaya and Akash is, there are also catalytic grants available, right? So when you're starting, there are catalytic grants, you should look for that. As CEO NASCOM Foundation, my previous avatar, I used to run those programs where I used to give catalytic grants. Second thing is, why are you shying away from making some profits? Why can't you be social entrepreneurs? I think that's important. Why only not for profit? Look at social entrepreneurship. That's where you'll be able to even fund your model as well as take it forward. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's a forever debate that the sector as a whole has been going through. We will not find the answer. Yes, ma'am. We'll take that as the last one, please.
My question is for Akash. Basically, I work with India Welfare Trust, and we do run a Evolve karke, a small incubation where we give seed funding and all that. The change to this is we give only incubation to organization which run on volunteering. Since you mentioned you are like you run on volunteering, my curiosity is after receiving so much of mentorship and growing and being the one of the youngest change maker, how you mentor your volunteers. I mean, how you make sure that they stick on, how you make sure that the journey continues, because your volunteers are not there, we have a showdown, right? I mean, you don't see the journey continuing, or there is a speed breaker there, or you see that there is a stop again, you bring in somebody else, and how you address that. Being young, how you coach others, how you coach corporates, how you make sure that it continues.
Thank you so much for that question. And in fact, I was invited to your Evolve cohort's inauguration as well, and very coincidentally, they asked me the same question there as well. How do you transfer the knowledge that you've gained, and how do you mentor volunteers? So I think what I would say is I have not really mentored volunteers. I think I've learned from the volunteers. Because when I was, say, a few years ago, in 2020, when we were running our COVID relief programs, my chief of volunteer resource operations was a 9th grader. And my head of finance was my head of external affairs was 11th grader. My head of finance was a 12th grader. And, because we were running a non-profit and we had done so well, suddenly like cabinet ministers were tweeting, supporting us. Forbes invited me to like the Forbes India Leadership Awards. A lot of media came our way. And then we opened internship applications. Suddenly MBA students from some good universities wanted to intern with us because they see this very high growth organization and they wanted to see how they can contribute. And I have a 9th grader here sitting and interviewing MBA students to decide whether or not they can intern with my organization. And we have every major media house like Times of India, Hindu, Deccan Herald, Indian Express, all of them covering us. And a 11th grader is sitting and interacting with them. And the best is my head of finance was a 12th grader. And I remember one of our initial conversations with a vendor, we called him and said, hey, we want to place an order for a long list of equipments. And he said, sure, I'll give you a pro forma invoice, you give me a purchase order, and based on that you can make an advance payment, then we'll give you a proof of stock. After that you release the next tranche of payment, then we'll give you a receipt. And then we just said yes to all of that. And then me and my head of finance were like, what does any of this mean? So I feel along this entire journey, more than me mentoring them, I think what I've done is I've really just picked people who can learn, people who have high levels of ownership, self-efficacy, and demonstrate agency. I've just put them in charge of the right departments, and they learn and they end up teaching me. So I think that is pretty much what we've done.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really sorry. I don't think we can get to any more questions before they kick us off the stage. But we're here. I think we can have a chat. But thank you so much. I think as just a quick closing, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for being there with us. I think for us, it is what I've heard you all say is that it's important to visualize the mentoring ecosystem for change making as an equal alliance, right? So it's not, there are no power sort of dynamics here. We are all sort of just learning from each other's lived reality and acknowledging that the other person might have a completely different reality, and it's up to them to take what they want to take. I think one key thing, and we've celebrated mentors and spoken about mentors quite a bit, but one thing I want to sort of also acknowledge is that the credit also goes to the mentee, right? Not everybody knows how to draw the best support from the best sort of adult or a mentor or whoever is around them. So I think there is also a need to help people with the skills to draw that right kind of support, and how do you sort of identify that and get that. So that I think it's important to, when we think about the ecosystem, think about that as well. And how do you give it back, right? Once you have gained those skills or whatever it is that you have gained from a mentor, then it becomes your responsibility to share it with people around you, right? So how do you sort of keep that full circle going? Lastly, I think I just wanted to say that at Ashoka, we do this not annual, but a 3-yearly impact report. And with our work with social entrepreneurs and change makers, we realized that many of them sort of shared that the beauty of being a part of a community is that they don't feel lonely anymore. And with that, we sort of named our impact report the Unlonely Planet. So I think for me, it's important that, we all sort of walk out of this room thinking about how do you sort of create an ecosystem for change making where people are not lonely anymore, and then they can sort of draw support from each other, people feel free to stand on each other's shoulders without sort of pushing anybody down. So I think that's the idea. As far as we can do that, we can all get to a point where solutions really outrun problems. But thank you so much for your time. I think it is lunch after this, so it's a very bad spot that I'm in, so I'm going to step away.
Yes, a big shout out and applause to all our esteemed guests, panelists, and thank you so much for taking out your time and sharing your valuable insights.